The speaker shares prior to thought, before you have a concept or conclusion about anything at all, presence is so. Presence prior to the imagination of self is the firmament of wonder, of innocence, of freedom. This morning's topic is inquiry into awakening. Our speaker Spark has been facilitating weekly meetings of the Night Sky Sangha since 2010. The Night Sky Sangha holds regular meetings to honor and celebrate the nature of presence. This presence has always been and requires no effort of any kind, which is necessary to sense the origin and emptiness of self. As one becomes acquainted with presence, the inherent freedom from finding anything at all, one's consciousness expands to embrace this innate wisdom, seeking nothing from anyone or anything, which is bliss. Immersion in the present experience leads invariably to liberation. What can be helpful in the discovery of yourself are informal forums where observation is encouraged and supported by the simplicity of being, the pleasure of inquiry, and the nourishment of conversation. Prior to his involvement with the Night Sky Sangha, our speaker Spark Jeff has enjoyed ample appreciation for numerous contemplative traditions, including study in India and elsewhere of Kundalini yoga and absorption practices, Buddhist Vipassana practices, Kashmiri yoga and presence practices, shamanic journey work, Tibetan phurba rituals, somatic therapies, addiction and recovery work, and other modalities. Let's hear what our insights Jeff has to share with us this morning. And so now I turn it over to you, Jeff.
Hello. This, and please don't be alarmed, is a ritual dagger from the Tibetan tradition referred to as a phurba. It is a three-sided dagger. As you'll notice, it also has three personalities at the head of the dagger, and a ceremonial dorje in the center of the dagger, which looks more like this. These are tools used in Tibetan and shamanic traditions to pierce the veil of presumption. And by doing so, one is ceremonially released from the imposition of the past, from the presumptions of the present, and from any anticipation of the future. Working with these tools is not a trivial matter. It's not merely for entertainment purposes. working with these tools can provide a window or a wormhole into altered states of consciousness, which can invariably have an impact or an effect on the way that one perceives the world. They have the capacity to shift the bias with which you meet present experience. For some, that kind of ceremonial intervention can be quite fascinating, nourishing, strange beyond imagination. For others, tearing the fabric of the continuity of self can be rather terrifying, unnerving, insecure, and unpleasant. So there's a fee one must pay if it's your predilection, if it's your inspiration or interest, to shift the bias with which you meet present experience so that you can get a glimpse of something that is beyond familiarity, beyond your self, beyond the imposition of what you imagine reality is. Why would someone be motivated to do such a strange thing? Well, I can't really say. When it comes to present experience, we have certainly a lot of opinions, a lot of conditioning, expectations, and projection. We want or need things to be a certain way. But how could freedom possibly be accompanied by the momentum or inertia of wanting things to be a certain way or needing them to be a certain way? To meet present experience without conditioning is a rather shamanic gesture. In that, the strongly held continuity of one's self as a creature in time-space can be meaningfully, profoundly affected. One no longer relies on the movement of knowledge, the movement of faith, the presentation of authority or religion to provide them with any sense of security or orientation whatsoever. So one meets present experience free from authority, free from training, free from faith. One meets present experience on its terms, not my terms. And for that, one requires a certain, you could say, preparation, a certain quality of discipline or affection to sense what presence is without projecting upon it, without needing anything from it. Prior to the movement of mind, the tyranny and affliction of mind, there is this presence. There is a profound, if not sacred, silence. Its nourishment is not what it can do for you. Its nourishment is simply in the abiding. Our habit tends to be, we meet present experience through the bias of thought, memory, the strain of performance anxiety, or manipulating circumstances to ameliorate our insecurity or our discomforts. We remain in a loop of do, be, go. Do, be, go. Insisting that things mean what they need to mean for me, for my pleasure, for my entertainment, for my well-being. And this is an incarceration. It's an entrapment. We imagine that freedom might have to do with how I relate to things, how I frame them, how I believe in them, how I hold them to be near or dear or antagonistic. But freedom has nothing at all to do with belief or behavior or predilection. The circumstances and events of life will be what they are. When we meet present experience through anticipation, control, we suffer the pangs of separation, of the exercise of personal will. And this kind of reflex further incarcerates us as the beer and the doer, the chooser and the decider, the one who can manipulate circumstances and events or manipulate my own behavior. As the reflex of anticipation, manipulation, projection eases and softens, one can discover a profound wealth of nourishment that has no implication. That needn't become anything. In our digital age, there's more information than any one human being can digest, can integrate, can benefit from. We're overwhelmed by data and persuasion, story. We have no time to rest in stillness, silence, non-affliction. Everyone and everything is vying for our attention, or our money, or our loyalty. It's downright exhausting. One needn't be dependent upon authority of any kind, living, dead, ascended, or otherwise, because nobody knows what this is. Nobody knows what this is. Not consciousness, not radiance, not presence. This is mystery, streaming mystery. It is absolute. It is sovereign. Christ consciousness is exactly this. It's not other than here. It's not other than now. This is the entirety. And you don't have to do anything about it. You don't have to do anything with it. You don't have to do anything about yourself. You don't have to do anything with yourself. The mind will attempt to seduce you that you're a creature of time, bound by sensuality, bound to experience. But that might not be so. Time does not bind you. Space does not bind you. Perception does not bind you. Even consciousness itself in its entirety does not bind you. Free from anticipation, becoming. Free from justification, from explanation. That is this presence. Even one's own inner authority can become silent. You needn't take advice from yourself. If one relies on memory as the principal engagement with present experience, it is hallucinatory, unsatisfactory. To be a touch bold, nothing ever happened to you before now. You're not the product of what came before, of what may have occurred before. Meeting present experience, free from conditioning, free from bias, free from the greed of anticipation. You needn't lift a finger for this to be any different than the way that it is right now. if we resort to mind as a companion, as an entertainer, as a narrator, we will find all the mirth, mystery, and misery that mind is capable of generating. And then we identify with that mind as myself. We presume that what we're capable of thinking about or thinking of is true, is binding. But what if we were to meet present experience free from the imposition of mind, free from the imposition of imagination? What would it feel like to be exactly yourself without the imposition of a personal past? The feeling tone of present experience is the reality. What you think, what you imagine, what you feel about things, what you think about things is hallucination. We interject the myth of a personal self upon the fabric of present experience, present reality. We interject ourselves. We suffer the insecurity of having to be relevant, counted, noticed, contributing. What if this present moment makes no demand upon us? Do we have the courage not to make any demand upon it? You don't know what this is. The physicists, they don't know what this is. All of the masters that have come and gone, they don't know what this is. Religion is superstition. Belief is superstition. You could say the human being has created and relied upon these superstitions for as long as any of us can remember, as a form of security, manipulation, authority, behavioral conformity. And we can see on the world stage just how well all of these religions get along with each other. The presumption of myself as an independently existing entity, that is another religion. We think we want peace. We, as in collective humanity, has been praying for peace for as long as we've been praying. We wonder how well that's worked out. For some few, discarding religion, discarding belief, discarding superstition is a window to absolute freedom, non-conformity. But it is an insecure journey. There is tremendous turbulence. One passes through the myth of oneself, the pride of persistence, the pride of competency, in order to meet present experience on its terms, without the inertia, the weight of belief or superstition, insistence, demand. Present experience is a streaming catharsis. To hold it lightly is to be asleep. To meet presence through the bias of familiarity is to be asleep. Not knowing, innocence, affection, without demand. That's how one can meet present experience. With passion. Without opinion. Without needing to convince anybody of anything. Without needing to be convinced of anything. Freedom from conditioning is dignity. Availability. The fee one must pay to meet present experience without conditioning is the pride of oneself. All that we hold dear or imagine to hold dear, that's the fee. I'm not in possession of anything, no spiritual experience. I have no knowledge of anything. Nothing ever happened to me before now. And if it did, I've long forgotten it. And cats are okay, of course. Some might say they're essential, and I respect those people. You see, once you rely on the authority of another or your own inner authority, you become secondhand. Second rate. You don't need to know anything about this. You don't need to have any kind of magical or secret wisdom, because any kind of magical or secret wisdom would only be about a hallucination. We don't need to be prideful of what we've learned or accomplished, or what we have to share with others, how we might influence others. This is a prison. If you trade knowledge for money, it's a prison. To take the risk to inhabit your own dignity. You cannot be dependent on anything, anyone. You cannot be dependent on experience itself. For as long as we're a product of bias, presumption, projection, we're not free. We're always secondhand, second rate. We don't know how to meet present experience on its terms. I had to ask my wife to stop making breakfast. This is so much fun. I made some oatmeal this morning. It was amazing. Measured out the water, a half a cup of oats. I cut some dates. Dates are beautiful. They're caramel. You don't even have to eat them to be nourished by them. So I sliced them really thin and put them in the boiling water. And I thought, oh, this is fantastic. And then I had some pecans, and I sliced those as well, and I held one up and I was like, oh my God. And I put those in the boiling water too, and a pinch of salt. I followed the directions. And then I poured in the oatmeal nice and slowly, listening to the sound of the oats hit the boiling water. And I was stirring it. And I was like, oh my God, this is fantastic. I hadn't even eaten a thing. I didn't cheat. I didn't have a date. I didn't have a pecan. And I was stirring. And the boiling water, the blop, 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 blop. And I was entranced, absolutely entranced. It was a very simple morning. It was a delicious bowl of oatmeal. I ate it nonstop. I don't even think I breathed. That was enough. This is enough. This is always enough. It's more than enough. It's so good, it's excruciating. The world has become mad with mind, mad with pride, perhaps unavoidable. But we don't have to be victimized by the narrative, by the media, by the fear. We needn't be victimized by the madness of the world. It's not our madness. It's not my madness. I can stir some oats into boiling water and be exalted. I can fulfill a dignity which is sovereign and autonomous, which is myself. I don't have to be imposed upon by anyone's ideas, most importantly, my own. I can meet present experience with absolute freedom, textural, palpable, joyful, innocent freedom. I've shared too much.